everything in the fitness industry should be done with the customer in mind. Are we actually replacing because we need to replace and it's broken, or because the customer wants to replace and wants to see something new? New generations will expect much more interaction with technology, with screens and AI, and because it's natural to them.
Welcome to this week's episode of Lifts. I've just returned. I'm a little bit jet lagged. I've returned from the UK a couple of days ago, and I think on the last podcast I was talking about my new sort of dealing with jet lag routine, which seems to so far have worked perfectly. I did the hostage tape, and then a friend of mine told me about this methylene blue, which I was updating you on yesterday, Mo, and that was really good. I don't know whether it was due to the methylene blue, or just I got my sleep right. But I had a friend of mine locally has created this formula which has got methylene blue and silver and gold particles in it, and apparently it's great for dealing with any kind of illness, COVID, you name it. But also it works on your mitochondria, so it's meant to help with energy throughout the day. So I just I have a blue tongue. I kind of you can see that there. You just take a drop on your tongue in the morning, and it's like a sort of like a quad shot of espresso, and you feel great all day. So recommend it.
It's so interesting, Matthew, looking at how you travel. So I'm just imagining this, right? So here's Mohammed traveling with some hostage tape and a blue tongue. I don't. It might scare some people. It might not really work. I remember just traveling, just to listen. Going through. We were talking about the Gulf War kind of before this, and we're going to get to our special guest here who's in Kuwait, but some of these things that you all kind of try might not work for a guy like me right now when I'm traveling. But I have to ask, the hostage tape, because you were back and forth whether you were going to do it on the airplane. You were traveling with your daughter, I think. Did you? So you guys actually did it on the plane?
Yeah, I skipped the plane. I just had a very uncomfortable trip, so I like putting that on and moving around and on the flight didn't work for me. But as soon as I got there, I used it, and I'm not sure how much that helped, but I kind of had. I also did the sauna as well. I had a sauna protocol as well, which I think helped. So I just did everything possible that I could imagine, and felt great. So there you go.
Well, I'm definitely curious about this methylene blue thing, and I've got a couple of long haul trips coming up, so would love to do it. Look, mine's kind of simple. I just land wherever it is that I'm going to, and I go out for a 4 to 6 mile run, come back, maybe do the sauna, and I'm good, right? So I think movement when you are traveling is something that just helps the body get reset. Of course, I love to hydrate well. One thing I think both you and I have avoided recently, I think all of this years, I've stopped drinking on planes.
Yeah.
It might even have been 2 years. I've stopped drinking on planes, and I watch what I eat on planes.
Well,
Sometimes I
actually
even forego food.
stopping drinking altogether. I think that was a big thing, because normally when I'm traveling, I have some alcohol, so I'm still off alcohol. In fact, I'm kind of going. Well, maybe that's a separate podcast. We'll have to get
So
into
how many months have you
thing.
been that you've now? Has it been 3 months?
It's 2.5 now. Yeah,
2.5, almost 3 months. Okay, well,
but that's the big one. That's the big one, I think, out of everything.
well, I'm curious. With our special guest here, Yves, I think with most of the countries that you're in, you don't even have alcohol, so it might not even be an option. But I want to introduce the special guest who we have on this episode of Lifts, Yves Preissler, who I've gotten a chance to know over the last couple of years. I think, Matthew, you have known Yves for much longer than that. Just to introduce Yves to our audience, Yves is the founder and CEO of YP Business Consulting, which is a privately owned business headquartered in Kuwait, which is where he's sitting right now, but has a global footprint and a global focus. The company provides turnkey modular solutions for fitness, leisure, sport recovery, and spa products. You have a much more extensive bio. You are highly awarded. It seems like everyone in the industry around the world knows who you are, and you have a great reputation. I came across you when I was looking to expand kind of our presence and reach within the Gulf region. And I had reached out to you and we had kind of collaborated and worked together. But since then, I've had a chance to look at some of the incredible designs. In fact, I've visited some of your earlier projects like Warehouse Gym in the UAE, and I think you've just done phenomenal work. So you've got this knack, and as someone who runs also a consultancy, but in technology and software, we place a high emphasis on the emotional connection that a user has when they touch a digital product. I feel like you've really done the same for a gym space. And of course, Matthew, runs a company that is also focused on the experiential as well, and really kind of taking things that might seem simple, but really having it have an emotional effect on people. So Yves, would love to kind of start there. What is your philosophy when it comes to how you look at the bespoke designs that you've had a chance to build?
Thank you very much for the introduction, Mohammed and Matthew. It's nice to be on the podcast. In regards to your question, Mohammed, I think everything in the fitness industry should be done with the customer in mind. Everything what we do for the customer, let it be the club design, website design, customer journey design as such, is with the customer in mind. So when we design clubs or research clubs or build products for clients, even recruit people, we think about the customer and how they're going to interact with the person, with the product, or with the thing we create.
Yes, so much of what we do, I mean, traditionally with gyms has been focused on operational efficiencies, gross margins, negotiating with vendors. But I think everyone, with the three of us on this call, we all put the customer first. And I've had so many conversations with Matthew about what the customer experience is like. You've just kind of talked about it. So do you think it's more about learning from other industries like hospitality, where we maybe, those industries have really put the emphasis on the customer experience, rather than efficiencies, with the gym industry has somewhat been known for? Is that where you get a lot of your inspiration from?
Hospitality is one place I get inspiration from, but the most inspiration I get from a country, and that's the country or the Emirate of Dubai, because they put everything at the heart of their customer, which is their tourist, which is their population, which is anyone who interacts with the country in any way. That starts with the airport. That starts with how you've been picked up, how you be on the road, how buildings are done, and so on. So I really look at that. How good can it be as a citizen or as a resident in this country, and then we translate that often into our projects within the Gulf or within international other places.
Well, one of the things I thought I was, Mo and I were looking at a number of different articles to discuss with you on the podcast today, and one of the things that I thought would be well, that would be quite fitting. There was an article in Lux magazine which talks about the future of fitness and how wellness and luxury are transforming training. And essentially, it's a pretty long article. It's more of a report than an article. The article covers a few key areas, which is which I think will be good for us to sort of discuss here and get your thoughts on them. Number one was the evolving customer expectations, and certainly I think in the luxury side, it seems as though it's broadening its appeal beyond traditional demographics, and it really seems to attract a diverse clientele, which is quite relevant when you look at probably more the traditional fitness clubs, which are predominantly focused on a very young and in some case transient demographic. So there's the customer expectations, there's technological integration, and I think this is pretty interesting, particularly with the rise of AI and how that's being incorporated in many of these experiences. You've got the holistic wellness approach. So now we're certainly seeing that fitness is a very narrow term for what people are now offering, and if you look at things like the wellness from recovery to various different treatments and therapies that people are now exploring as part of that journey. And then you've also got sustainability and innovation. So the industry's embracing sustainable practices and innovation solutions to meet the evolving demands of the health conscious consumers. And this one in particular I found quite interesting, because I think when you look at a lot of business models, particularly in the health space, then you would naturally consider us as individuals in terms of living long and healthy lives, from what we eat, the planet that we live in. And although you hear things like sustainability discussed in many different areas, it doesn't seem to be something that's necessarily rooted today within the fitness industry. So I just thought, maybe we kind of start with those points there, Yves, and just get your thoughts on if any of those are particularly relevant to you in how you look at new products or when you're providing advice or consulting for any clients.
I would like to answer first on sustainability. I think it is actually there, but it's overlooked. Like for myself, I've been working on sustainability in fitness the last 15 years with refurbishing equipment, bringing old equipment back to life and making it look exactly like new. Many lines have not changed. I also believe in other articles which you can read, which I've published, that the biomechanics and the builds were better back in the day. So I believe there is some sustainability aspect that when people would be buying more refurbished equipment or self-powered fitness equipment like treadmills or whatever, it's just the awareness is not there. I think it's a big buzzword across industries, and people can look at it a bit sharper and say, okay, what can I actually do? So there's a small movement happening, but it could be much bigger, right?
The wait is over. Our new Escape Fitness catalogue has landed. This is the essential guide to all of the latest product innovations that are shaping the future of functional training. Bigger and better than ever, this year's catalogue is 190 pages, jam-packed with everything from eye-catching, bespoke functional training frames to some of the latest strength training equipment. So sign up today to receive the digital version today. So what are you waiting for? Go to escapefitness.com now.
I know certainly, in Germany, this is something that you hear more of. For example, the guys at McFit, RSG, for example, they were one of the first people I think in the world to create a green gym. Now, how successful that was, I don't know, but they certainly were the first ones that put it out there. And when you think, we interview a lot of people within the space, and when you think about the essence of health and well-being, it very much comes down to the planet we live in, the water we drink, the food we eat, and particularly when it comes to the equipment that you use, as an example, or the buildings that you use it in. It's not very few of the traditional businesses really seem to put an emphasis on that. And using a lot of plastics or materials that, or even products, a lot of cases it's buy something cheap, as cheap as possible because we can replace it. And there doesn't seem to be that sort of awareness, which is you've just described, which is about that whole environment that you're actually spending time in.
No, you're absolutely right, but this would start at supply chain, right? And we need to go all the way to China and look how is this equipment actually manufactured, and is it manufactured to last or is it manufactured to break? Is it manufactured to change after 18 to 24 months, or is it really made to last? I'm going back to what I have said just earlier. Equipment back in the day was built for niche markets, bodybuilders. There was tougher steel, there were better rollers, stronger cables, better grips, and so on. No shrouds, or it were metal shrouds. So this equipment was made to last, and I myself in my gyms in East Africa, Kenya, use only refurbished equipment for that very reason. Not because it's less expensive, it's durable and it lasts longer. Besides, it has often better biomechanics. So let's go back to supply chain. Currently, everything, not only fitness equipment or flooring, has a lifetime, and it's a shorter lifetime than it used to be. So I would challenge the entire fitness industry. Why is it that we changed and became steel and plastic suppliers and compete so much on price and therefore on quality, when we could have continued to build great fitness equipment? And I not want to play now your drum, Matthew, but Escape Fitness inherently lasts very long. You buy it and it has good quality and it does last. And there's other functional fitness equipment suppliers where you buy it and it lasts 12, maybe 18 months and you have to replace it. Another good vendor, for example, is FitBench. I'm using refurbished fitness fit benches out of Platform Studios Dubai in my clubs in AfroFit. These benches are now almost 10 years old. It was a FitBench number one. The bench is nothing wrong with it. I've repainted it. The deck is okay. The dumbbells, of course, they were wearing out because it became round. So we have had new Hexel dumbbells. But it's an industry-wide problem, and it starts at manufacturing and design. And it starts as us as users, what we want to buy. Do we want to buy good quality equipment lasting longer? Or do we want to buy cheap and cheerful and replace? And are we actually replacing because we need to replace and it's broken? Or because the customer wants to replace and wants to see something new?
No, I think those are fantastic insights. And if you look at broader consumer trends, I mean, I'll take two industries. One is phones. The phone upgrade cycle, I mean, I still have an iPhone 12 because I don't want to migrate my stuff over to a new phone. But I used to, and I'm sure with the two of you, but back when smartphones came out, I would get a new phone every year because the leaps were so big year over year, or maybe at the longest was every 2 years. But today, the leaps are incremental and they're small. So the phones are lasting longer, so you're no longer updating it as often. The second one is cars. We're keeping cars longer today than we were before. And I think all of that has a role in sustainability. But something, another parallel which I want to look at is also incentives. So looking at large, both corporate and franchise-based models, so much of the franchise business that goes up to corporate is they make margin on equipment. They make margin on, peripherals and retail and all the other things. And in some ways, they're kind of pushing down an equipment refresh. In fact, a lot of franchise agreements will say that every 5 years you have to refresh your equipment, or maybe because of COVID now it's been 7 years because you had 2 years of equipment that's not being used. So I think that's one piece that people are looking at. It's almost like back when everyone used to lease cars, tires, would only last, only had to last for 3 years, right? Because the average lease was 24 months or so, or up to 3 years. And I wonder how much do we as an industry, to your point, Yves, have to look at sustainability and re-incentivize that? Maybe if you keep the equipment, if the equipment is good enough, or you were incentivized to maintain it so it lasts 2 more years, that maybe some of your franchise fees or you get some other sort of incentives. But how much do you think that when it comes to these larger companies, that they need to be incentivized to have sustainability at the forefront? Because it's one thing to do it in some of these bespoke locations that maybe has anywhere from 1 to 10 clubs. But it's another thing to do it for a brand that has 300 or 500 locations.
Yeah, it's a very large conversation we're trying to solve within 30 minutes. It's how humans perceive the never-ending greed. And franchisees, should they really earn on the equipment? They should not. They should earn on the business model and the solutions they provided to the franchisee, the franchisor, I mean. So they should not earn on equipment, but there's these equipment kickbacks from all these equipment companies offered in order to stay with the franchise. It's a very large discussion, I think, which we internally will not solve and will not make a lot of friends talking about it either. But I think it's good that we say it and call out the franchisees franchisors for doing it. But raising awareness can start today with that podcast. Maintain your fitness equipment, do preventative maintenance to make it last longer. It's healthy for your bottom line and for your profits, and it's also healthy for the planet.
It's really a contradiction in some ways. There's an interesting book that I've sort of started to read, which is called Growth, and it really talks about over the past 2 centuries, economic growth has made a significant impact to society in a positive way, but it also seems to have got to the stage where the pursuit of growth in some cases now sort of has almost gone in some cases too far, where it's having a detrimental effect, and we're all sort of part of that and involved in it. But I think when you're looking at health and wellness, and you'll certainly see this in some of these sort of high-end luxury spa businesses that seem to have people that are making an effort to consider things like that. But I do think it's very counterintuitive, that type of philosophy, and I think maybe looking for a way where there can be economic success or growth or ultimately profitability, but in a way that is congruent with what the business is about. And I think it's very easy for everybody to, you get caught up in whether you get an investment for an idea or whatever, and the primary goal is to grow as quick as possible and as big as possible at all costs. But in many cases, that isn't always a good thing when it comes to the overall health and the wellness of us humans.
I think only new generation will understand that. Your kids or people that you're growing up now. Our generation has been built on more and more and more on purchase and profit and growth for the sake of growth, even for much more headache and small profit percentages. But awareness is changing, and people talk about it. Alone that we talk about it is a good thing. There will be very little change in us, Matthew.
Well, I want to move on to technology, because I think this is also an interesting one for a number of reasons, including when you talk about supply chain. I've seen some some organizations doing this quite successfully, where they're utilizing technology, are able to clearly identify where things are coming from and where they're going, and there's a number of different uses for technology outside the obvious. But what are you seeing from a technology perspective in what you're doing? And is there any sort of interesting uses that are not common and are not generally talked about?
Everyone, of course, is on this AI bandwagon. So that is a big thing, which is happening, like automation, artificial intelligence, and member prediction and member behavior. I think which is a good thing to fix the never-ending retention problem, and to get more humans to interact with the customers, because they don't have to do what they used to do in compiling data and analyzing data. It's now done for you, so we can actually go on the shop floor and spend time with the customer and maintain and retain the customer. Obviously, other companies then take it to the extreme to replace the humans as much as they can. And there's even less interaction with the customer, as the customer joins online, checks in at the club with Face ID, purchases with a card or with a phone, and then follows a program by an application or by a virtual trainer. I think it goes in both ways. Is there any technology we are not aware about? I don't know any at the moment. It's pretty straightforward, especially in fitness industry. I think we are further behind than many other industries, like maybe like hospitality or tourism, which is much much earlier and much more embraced technology than the fitness industry. We are just starting. I think Mohammed can answer that question better than me.
There's a new gym that's opening up in Santa Monica, not too far from Matthew. And maybe Matthew, when I come out to the West Coast in the next couple of weeks, we can go and get a preview of it. But what they claim to be doing, and we've heard about Fred Fitness just because we were close with some of their partners, especially eGym. So we know that this was being launched earlier in the year, but they claim to be the first truly AI-powered gym. Now, we've implemented AI at some very large-scale gyms, including Lifetime and some others. But this one claims to be a gym that is entirely powered on AI. Now, what it looks like is that it's really built on eGym's Genius AI platform. But I'm curious, what it seems like they're doing here is, especially post-pandemic, there's been a lot of issues around staffing, especially quality staffing, because people left the industry because they weren't able to find work during the pandemic. And it looks like Fred Fitness is looking to address some of the shortfalls or shortcomings in workforce by implementing AI for personal training. When you're designing gyms, and as you're thinking about the next generation of gym design, is this something that you're looking at? Are you looking at, because on one hand, you're talking about the benefits and sustainability of refurbished equipment, and that it's even built better than what that equipment is today. On the other hand, like here, you've got eGym with motorized strength and high-tech kind of displays and implementing AI. How should a gym be thinking about design as it relates to both equipment and technology, as you're looking at it? Because they're kind of two opposing forces, if you will.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It depends on the target customer and on which generation you want to serve. If we want to continue to serve our generation and older, it will be harder for us and older generations to adapt to be fully AI and technology driven, right? Someone is today 70 years old, or I think they have a hard time to train in the gym like that. They want to see old and familiar equipment. New generations will expect much more interaction with technology, with screens and AI, and because it's natural to them. So when you ask me how would you design gyms in the future for the next 10 years, it's either very target customer focused, where you have a customer segment you're serving, and you adapt to their knowledge and usage of technology. And if you want to serve a gym which is a much broader customer segment, you would build hybrids. But I still believe that it is good that if humans interact with humans on the floor, so it becomes more of a social experience. And I do not think technology can bind you so much on fitness training, because yes, it can explain you what to do, but it cannot read your emotions. It cannot help you out. It cannot have a chat with you on the gym floor. Not yet.
Do you guys think though, like, it's a good point, and I agree with what you're saying. What I don't know is where this technology is going, and there's no question that the speed of change in this space is just mind blowing. Like, just to keep up with it is quite amazing. But do you see that there could be that it could be possible to imagine where, even if you are, let's say, in your 70s and 80s and are not into technology in any way, and like the sort of more traditional way of dealing with people and dealing with equipment, do you think that technology could get to a stage where it's almost like seamless, where it is there, it is happening, but you're not aware of it, in terms of you're not picking up a phone, you're not picking up a device, it's just part of what's happening, and you're moving through that experience? Probably question to both of you, really.
So it's already pretty integrated, like what Mohammed has presented right now with the eGym place, right? So you only set it up once and you press buttons, and I don't know if the equipment recognizes your phone, so it would know that you are there already. Like we had a keynote from Anytime Fitness in Dubai Active 2 weeks ago. So Anytime Fitness launched an app, so when you come close with your phone to the club, the trainer or the club operator gets a message that you're there. It's already pretty seamless, right? If your location is on, bing, Mohammed is coming in the next 10 seconds, and then he's there. And then he comes out of the changing room, there's another beacon, bing, he's now on the floor, he has not trained for the last 10 days, show him something new. So what you're describing, Matthew, is surely coming. But I will still question, is this the right way to go about it?
Well,
What will we all be doing if we continue to automate everything? We're trying to make people healthier. Is it healthier to stare at another screen? Is it healthier for someone to sit at home and don't have anything to do? Or are we all becoming operators of technology, which actually humans could do, and give it a bit more meaning?
No, I think that's a really good point. So much around drive and motivation. And I'll give you a couple of examples, because I want to move on to this next section. Looking at, for the last, let's just say 5 to 8 years, there's been a push towards this digital virtual training within a club, a studio within a club, where you're looking at the screen. And there've been a lot of companies who've tried to do this. So essentially, you have a schedule, you go in, it's 10 a.m., you have a group yoga class, but you're looking at a digital experience. You're doing it with other people. And the thesis there, or the hypothesis rather, is that what was important is that you were doing workouts together with people, and that the instructor didn't really matter. And from all the brands that we know, in most cases, that has not really worked out. It has not really been successful. So now, even if you look at a mediocre instructor leading the class with a group person, you've got a much higher engagement, you have much higher attendance, you've got much higher activation. So there's an example of where technology really didn't work out to the way that you thought it to do. However, Matthew, back to your point, having it frictionless, I mean, there are ways to do that, right? Having the check-in, Yves, at the top of the podcast, you talked about you're walking in, it recognizes you don't have to scan your barcode. Maybe you just do your workout with a trainer, without a trainer, you walk out and you get a summary. Those types of low friction, but meaningful, predictive, engagement type of notifications that someone can act upon is really useful. But it's this really delicate, and which is why when we build technology, it's delicate balance between too much notification and also too little notification. You've got to strike the right balance, and that's really an art. It's not a science. One thing I'm curious about, Yves, as we're wrapping up here in a couple of minutes, is looking at gym design. And I know this we could spend an hour talking about this, but both Matthew and I, independently and together, have had conversations with some really large operators talking about the evolution of group fitness, personalized fitness, and kind of building out intentional spaces. You even talked about Anytime, right? Would they consider having a section carved out within an Anytime club where maybe they do a little Orange Theory fitness workout? Not a whole Orange Theory fitness class, but it's a little section where you could spend 45 minutes or an hour doing your workouts instead of you having to walk around the whole floor. They're carving out this. And the other one that we've seen more engagement on is small group training. So maybe you get 3 to 5 people with one personal trainer, and you're not kind of doing this personal training in a small group session. How do you think about gym design and gym layout with some of these evolutions happening?
Yeah, you see more and more that the group exercise spaces have moved onto the gym floor. I think, Mesh, you can say a thing or two, right? How much functional equipment you now find on the gym floor. You find rakes, you find steps, you find barrels, you find hammers, and people want to work out together. And they don't want to necessarily do it in a choreographed kind of environment in a room to music. They want to have it more casually, where they work out either not onto as per a schedule, but they work out in a group, and you use this equipment. And it's going to be on the floor because you don't need to hide away in a room. What the point of the walls is there that it's a structured activity, starts at a time and ends at a time. People now want to come to the gym anytime, and maybe they want to do a group workout or join in something which is going on, or meet someone. And that usually comes back to the gyms become more and more as a social space, right? So these group workout spaces are social spaces. So when we do gym design, to answer your question, we create more and more such spaces. Right? There's of course your normal strength equipment, fixed path resistance, but then you have your free weight area, which is usually set up now, not hidden away. It's in the middle of the gym floor. It didn't used to be like that, right? You put cardio first, so easy barrier of entry. Someone sees a treadmill, he can jump on it. Doesn't see any results, but he is walking. So the next thing you would see is somehow maybe the group exercise studio in the changing rooms, and then somewhere the free weights and functional would be hidden away because all the freaks are using it. But now everyone is somehow using it because we have a much more educated fitness consumer. So the gym design has also changed massively towards that educated gym consumer to go to these spaces which are designed for them and which are designed for clubs within the club. You have the weightlifting club, right? Everyone's on the Lico and Power Racks, and you have the kind of former CrossFitters functional training HIT, which are on the turf track and on the fit benches. Then you have still the old schoolers like myself, where somewhere to be found at free weights and the fixed path resistance and plate loaded. Yeah, and then I have also now the recovery stretching spaces have entered even the gym floor, where people stretch, don't do like yoga or Pilates itself, but they do long stretches, mobility and recovery. So while we're designing these gyms, we look again at the target customer. Who are we designing it for? What they want to use, and then put that on that gym floor with the client, the client who wants to target these clients.
Just on that, because quick question, like, what do you? It's a question. It's something that goes through my mind a lot. I get to talk to a lot of business owners and discuss ideas, and I was curious, and it applies to both gym design, the area that you're in, Yves, and also for Mo. But I just curious, how many drivers, whether it's creating technology or an idea, if you looked at the balance between solving a problem, solving a meaningful problem, and solving a meaningful problem to find ways to generate additional revenue. And although those two things, if you're running a business, it would be obvious, like of course they need to work together. But also, like, when it comes to software, there's many great ideas that are, particularly when you talk to investors, that are clearly geared around the business model itself, the ability to scale, the ability to create a recurring revenue opportunity over the product experience itself. And I just wanted, question to both of you really. How do you see the fitness industry? In a lot of cases, is it really a case of solving meaningful problems as a priority, or in some cases, do you see many of these new ideas? And we've all been around long enough to have seen many new concepts that have come along. Do you think that a lot of them down to the fact that it's a great business model, and if we sell the hell out of it, we're going to be successful, because it's a great model that creates a fantastic valuation for a business.
Well, I think one, that's a great question to wrap up on here. But there is a lot to unpack there, Matthew. So it kind of goes back to balance, and where do you kind of have a creative value happen? And to Yves' point here, there is a sense, and I think we've seen this, of almost overdoing technology, where you're forcing yourself to put technology because you have to do it. Technology implementation, like design, is an art. It's not a science. There's no equation here. You've got to look at localization. Where are you implementing it? You have to look at the consumer. What is your expectation? And then finally, you have to look at outcomes. How can you win for the consumer? If you win for the consumer, and to Yves' point, right, like if they're on a treadmill but they're seeing no results, that's not winning, because that customer is going to churn after 3 months. So how do you get? And I would also add aspirational. So when you have the strength machines in the front, you've got some application of tech in some way, but you're seeing aspirational people. You're seeing people working hard, seeing results, and you could see yourself being a part of them. I think that to me is more important. And if technology can help influence that as a lever, from a design perspective, it has to be designed first, and technology is more like helping that design come to life rather than the other way around. But Yves, I'd love to kind of get your final thoughts on Matthew's question.
Well, there's certain companies in the market, right, who are data driven, and where you have to enter each and everything you're doing. Is this actually helping or destroying your workout? In my opinion, it's like this: if the technology helps the customer to maintain their workout and makes them come to the gym, makes them see results, it has a good place in the business. If the technology is there to harness and milk data for the gym to make more money, ultimately, then it's not the right place. And to sell them something extra, let's say the name, the email address, and the phone is already passed around, if we want it or not. But now it's our weight, our heartbeat, how long we're spending in the gym. Is this the right or the wrong thing to do? We stop here.
Matthew, any closing thoughts from this episode for you?
Yeah, well, that came up after that question sort of came up as we were talking, and it's something I'm going to ask more about when I suppose, when I'm involved in different projects, and something as it relates, like our earlier conversation about sustainability as well. In particular, I think it's a good question to think about, and I'd be interested to know. Maybe there's a book about it. I'd be interested to see, the companies that do prioritize one over the other, and what that means over the long term. Certainly, in the short term, you can have success by a great business model, but are those sustainable business models, as well as being having an emphasis on sustainability?
More and more customers will start using the gym membership they bought. Currently, the industry is built on the customers who don't use the gym memberships. It's changing the last 10 years. More higher usage, people come more often, and they actually come for what they paid for. So we as an industry have to think clearly where we're heading anyways. Because we no longer build on the customers who don't come.
Well, Yves, thank you so much for joining this episode of Lifts. I think we could have really spoken about this topic for hours. We need to have you back on and have a longer form episode, just even unpacking multiple different areas which you talked about. I think we can have an episode on each one of them. I'm going to try the closing this time, Matthew, and let's just see how that goes. But thanks again for listening to this episode of Lifts. If you like the episode, please share it with someone that you know. This will be posted on LinkedIn. If you have any comments, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any feedback, we'd like to hear from you as well. We will post some links to the articles that we had talked about today, as well as to Yves' website. Great to have you on this episode, Yves.